If you've been around any rural portion of America, you've undoubtedly seen farm machinery as farmers are busy harvesting their crops. But once trucks whisk the grain away to the elevators here at GCC, what happens to the grain from there? To answer that, we need to rewind a little bit and talk about the type of conversations that farmers have with our grain originators, even before that seed has been planted.
I've always been involved in agriculture. My parents were in the cattle business and then now in a feed and seed store, so agriculture is in my blood. I was really involved with 4-H and FFA growing up. I actually served as the state FFA president in 2013 to 2014, which led me to studying agriculture economics at Kansas State. After college, I worked in the grain business for about 3 years. I lived in Kansas City and then I lived in eastern Colorado. My husband's family farms south of Dighton and my parents live in Garden City, and so the opportunity came for us to move back to this area. And Garden City Co-op was a really natural fit for me, and I was really excited about the opportunity to come to work here. I'm really passionate about agriculture, and that's, I think, why I like doing this job so much, is because through what I do, I feel that I get to be a good resource to help farmers find success in their operations. A big part of my job is getting to know my customers and their operations and what their grain marketing needs might be, and that differs from farm to farm on what makes the most sense. But my job is to be proactive in helping farmers develop and execute those marketing plans. And in today's world, the markets move so fast, and a farmer maybe doesn't always have time to stay on top of what the markets are doing, because there's so many things that a farmer has to be good at in today's day and age. Agronomy, technology, weather, etc. And so my job is to take some of that off of the farmer, to understand and be able to quickly relay what the market's doing and what they should do to execute, to best fit what they need to do for their marketing plan. A lot of my phone calls look like, "Hey Lindy, the market's up 50 cents today, what's going on?" The majority of my day I spend reading market commentary, the news, trying to stay up on what the commodity markets are doing, and there's two pieces of that. So I try to stay really on top of what the commodity markets are doing, so that would be macroeconomic factors that are affecting that. So political things, global supply and demand, things like that, weather. But another equally big piece is staying on top of what our local grain markets are doing, which is most often reflected in what our basis levels are. So that would be more, what does our local supply and demand look like? What are the feed markets doing, the ethanol markets doing, the export markets through the rail? So understanding both sides of that is a big part of it. There's also, other administrative pieces that goes in that. So during harvest, it's all hands on deck for weighing trucks, analyzing grain, helping farmers with their grain sales and tickets, settlements. So there's definitely some other pieces that go in as well. I'd say a big part of what we are, and it's similar to what our salesmen do in agronomy, but is being the boots on the ground. For the most part, we're going to be a farmer's primary point of contact with the co-op, so we should have a really good feel for what our farmer's crop is, whether that's condition, expected yield. So internally, we talk a lot about what the size of the crop is going to be and what our elevator and operational needs are going to be for that, as well as working with our merchandising team that's going to sell the grain. So we work really tightly as a unit to make sure that we're covering all our bases. So it's a lot of disseminating information down to our farmers so that they understand what's going on with the markets, but also gaining that information from the farmers and disseminating it up within the company so that we can make the right decisions to serve our farmers' needs. There are several resources available through our grain origination team, but I think there's a lot of other pieces of what we do that maybe not everyone realizes. So our grain origination team writes a market commentary that we put out every week. I think that's a great resource because it gives high level talks about what's going on in the commodity markets, both big picture and also locally. I think that's a great resource. We offer a variety of different specialty contracts that can come through us, but I think the biggest resource that we can be is just being a trusted partner in our customers' marketing plans so that they can execute them into what makes the most sense for their operation. There are 3 members of our grain origination team, and within the last year and a half, we've opened 3 licensed branch offices of FCC Futures, which is a subsidiary of StoneX, to be able to offer commodity brokerage tools to our farmers. So we have 3 offices in Dighton, Ulysses, and in Garden City. The primary reason why we did this is because more and more farmers are using futures and options to protect their risk outside of maybe an ordinary cash contract that we would have been able to offer. And so it's just another tool in the toolbox that if it's a good fit for your operation, we wanted to be able to provide it. So as a grain originator, the primary side of the grain that I work on is buying the grain from the farmer into our elevator. That's the simplest way to explain what my job is. But once it's here, our grain merchandisers work with our partners to find the best market to sell our grain. And so that can head into a variety of different markets. I would say from this area, there's 3 primary markets that we would sell grain from our elevators into. The first is the export market. So a lot of grain that flows through our facilities will go on a rail car and will be taken to one of the ports. A lot of it goes to Houston to be exported to countries around the world to be used for food, animal feed, etc., whatever the country needs it for. But also locally, especially in our corn markets, there's strong demand. We're a corn deficit area with all the cattle feeding that happens here, so a lot of our corn will move into feed markets as well as ethanol markets. There's an ethanol plant in Garden City that a lot of our corn sometimes, when it makes sense, will flow through. Or sometimes our wheat does go into the milling market, so it would go on a rail to a mill to be turned into flour, which would be turned into bread or whatever. The cash price for grain composes of 2 pieces. The futures price, which is determined through, like we talked about, macroeconomic pieces, and it comes through the CME group. But there's also the basis piece, which I think is sometimes misunderstood of exactly what that is. The basis is the way that accurately local supply and demand is reflected. So there's a lot of pieces that go into what a basis value might be. Transportation to the end market is a large part of it. So what does it cost to truck or rail that grain to its final destination? But also the local supply and demand piece of that is a large portion as well. So whenever we sell grain on a basis level as well. And so if there's a shortage of corn and a feed yard really needs corn, then they're going to offer us a higher basis level to sell, which in turn should be reflected in a higher basis value at our elevator bid. So local supply and demand is really what drives the basis values that you see reflected in your elevator bids. On our website, you'll always typically see 2 bids for grain, an old crop bid as well as a new crop cash bid. Old crop bid is for bushels that are in the elevator or that you have stored. It's basically the value of grain that's already harvested. New crop bid is our bid for what's yet to come. So what will be harvested, whether it's wheat that's harvested in June or July, or fall crops that are going to be harvested September, October, November. A lot of times there's big differences between what those 2 prices are. And oftentimes you'll see, an old crop bid get stronger, better to the farmer as the year goes on, because there's less of it available to be purchased, less grain available to be purchased. So for instance, right now we're headed into the summer months of 2022. Our old crop corn value is very strong. The reason for that is because we had a lower fall harvest last year. The feed yard demand is really strong because there's not very much corn left for them to purchase to feed the cattle in the feed yards. And so right now, the demand for already harvested corn is very strong. Why would it be weaker for new crop? Well, we're headed into, a new crop year. We're going to have more crop harvested. So in today's marketplace, and it certainly can be different, old crop is worth more than new crop because there's such tighter supply and stronger demand for an old crop bushel versus new crop when we get more being harvested. So typically, like I said, we normally have an old crop and a new crop purchasing price. But as we get closer to harvest, those values begin to converge. And so we oftentimes will just be showing one price for old and new crop, and it will be the same. But if you ever have questions about exactly what you're seeing on our website, your best resource is to call into one of our offices and ask some questions so that you can make sure you're reading what's on our website correctly. I think that we have contracts that can fit a variety of risk tolerance and fit that. We have some more aggressive, maybe riskier type contracts, but we also have conservative contracts as well. So I think it's spending the time really getting to know what really fits an operation's needs. And it's not a one size fits all for everyone. Everyone has different needs, whether it's cash flow needs or risk coverage needs or whatever. And so it's our job to do a good job of figuring out what that need is and what we have that can best suit that. The most basic contract that we do is a forward cash contract. So that means you're locking in the future side and the basis side of your grain that's yet to be cut. But we can also break that down. We do futures only through our hedge to arrive contracts where you leave the basis open and set it later. We can do a basis only contract so the exact opposite of that, we set the basis and then you do the futures later. But we also have the ability to customize a lot of contracts for our farmers' needs through accumulators, minimum price contracts. We have 2 specialty contracts that we offer in-house, Alpine Pro and Summit Max. I do think that we have a lot of ways that we can tackle whatever a farmer's operations needs are, but it's just taking the time to both sides figure out what makes the most sense. So. Well, the biggest challenge that I have is farmer calling and saying, what's the market going to do? And really the answer is, it's either going to go up or it's going to go down. Really, right? I mean, there's so many factors that go into what the market can do that we can't outguess the market. No, if we could outguess the market, we would all be trading on our cell phones and on a beach somewhere. But you can't outguess it. And so all that I can do is give you the best recommendation to manage your risk based on what we know that day. But that's not to say that the headline can't change in 30 minutes and the market might be totally different. So it's challenging because I want to give the best recommendations and advice to my customers that I can. But that can change so fast that sometimes what's good advice one day might have been terrible advice the next day. But all that I can do and all that a farmer can do when they sell grain is to make the best decision based on what they know that day and do it. What I really enjoy about my job is just the farmers that we get to work with. It's really fulfilling to help a farmer make a decision that is profitable for his farm or is the right decision. And I really like that. I live in Dighton, so the people that I work with are my friends and people that I know in this community outside. So I find a lot of satisfaction and fulfillment through helping, people that I care about find success in their operation. I also really enjoy the challenge of looking at changing markets, and we're in volatility like we've never been in before, which is scary, but also is really exciting and interesting to try and figure out what's going on. The most basic thing that I hope that our farmers know is that we want to be on your team and we're all on the same team. And if a farmer is successful, then the co-op is going to be successful and vice versa. And so we need to be good at what we do so that we can provide value to you so that you find benefit to working with us and delivering your grain here. We want to be your trusted partner in your grain marketing plan.
A crop's journey from farm to fork is an interesting one, and the grain originator is a crucial part of helping our farmers be successful. And that is ultimately our mission here at GCC, to help our farmers, our members, be successful by creating value for their farm through our people, assets, and technology. Grain origination is one way we are moving forward together in achieving that mission. Until next time.